Hello, so this is a presentation as part of my goal for this year. You can see it's called Assessing Online Assessments, or Do We Really Need Proctored Exams? This is a slightly empirical analysis of one section of my Anatomy and Physiology 1 class. So just a few things here as we get started, kind of a full disclosure, is that I hate proctored exams. I hate the technical requirements and issues that can arise. And it's not just the issues that can arise, it's the consequences of those issues, whether that's stressing the students, me having to extend due dates, having to fix something that I don't know how to fix, the disaster emails, trusting, do I believe that their excuse is even valid, and the reason that they couldn't take it, all of these things. I don't like the nitpickiness of proctored exams because, of course, you have to make sure that every check box is checked that you want checked, and sometimes it checks something that you don't want checked, and then the answers are shown, or the students can't get in because of the password. So you have to get everything right. So there's so much stress going into it on the front end just to make sure that students have a seamless transition. I don't like the perceived added stress. Say perceived because I just assume that a proctored exam is more stressful because of the technical issues, maybe the worry of Big Brother watching you through the camera, of not being able to speak, of if you're looking one way, then you could fail, all of these things. As I mentioned already, I hate the excuses and the potential subjective adjustments that I would have to make, kind of based on, well, I can't do this for the whole class, but if this was your issue, how can I treat that uniquely? And then I don't find that the reports that I get are very useful. I find them incredibly overwhelming. The amount of detail from audio to um, visual to all of these things you have to look at, and I can't even keep track of the reports. And I thought that Proctorio would make it a lot more automatic to say, here's where they're cheating, but I can't figure out how to get the slider bar to move very quickly. And I end up watching all of the student videos and seeing what's going on, and it will flag this one movement, even though it wasn't bad at all. And I can see another student who's clearly cheating, and it's just green bars the whole way. So I don't find that it works. I find that it's a whole lot of work to put in for something that doesn't work that efficiently. And I don't know how effective it actually is for the student side. So obviously that's why I wanted to investigate this. So then the question, of course, is why do we proctor? I mean, I feel like I've talked to a lot of colleagues and they believe the same thing, that of course we proctor to prevent the great boogeyman, or I guess boogie person. I don't know if all boogeymen are male, but the great boogie person, cheating. This is the thing that we are designing our entire online classes around to. And that is that really the most effective way to design an online class? So these are my initial questions that led to this goal. Is the prevention of cheating a sufficient enough reason to design entire courses around? I don't like hearing as a reason to do something in class as, oh, but students could cheat, or students will cheat, or students will talk. I think we should design our classes always based on what does the research say leads to the best learning environment. Oh, with this is, what do students think about proctored or online exams? Have we actually gotten feedback from them? Are there any other valid options than just this typical proctored exam, trying to take a face-to-face exam and just force it or form it into an online environment? So here is my hesitancies though. And so this comes from a book that was a big influence in this presentation called Cheating Lessons by James Lang. And this is what he says. I tend to respond to any newfangled teaching approaches or technologies with caution. knowing that sometimes innovative technologies or methods turn out to be nothing more than expensive or time-consuming replications of more traditional or conventional approaches that still work perfectly well. And I so relate to this on any type of professional development, but certainly with this, with online, and we feel this pressure that we have to do it a certain way. And then we hear like proctored exams are the way to go, or use this resource, or do this. And I just have this initial big time hesitancy to say, whoa, why are we going to change something if another way that we've been doing for who knows how long works just as well and doesn't require so much work that the students maybe still enjoy and doesn't have so much risk of not working. Technology has such an inherent risk of not working and then screwing everything else up that depends on that technology. So first, let's look at the research. So as I mentioned, this is from a book that I read as part of my goal, which is Cheating Lessons by James Lang. Of course, as you can see, this was published in 2013, certainly before the pandemic, certainly before a huge push for online, but I think as that quote said before, that a lot of what he mentions is grounded in research based on how the students learn regardless of the environment. So a couple things that this book states from the beginning, and I think is important when we look at designing a class, is that first, cheating rates are not increasing. And this is something that has been studied actually pretty extensively. I think since the 50s or 60s was one of the first big studies, and there have been a lot of long range or kind of longitudinal studies on this. And so this is what James Lang says about this. And this is his caution. When we think that cheating is so prevalent that it's increasing, this is his caution. Alarmist arguments lead to alarmist responses, some of which require lots of activity on behalf of the faculty to achieve little effect. And I really resonate with that. And I think that that's been really true, is that we put in a lot of work to prevent something that, like I said, is sort of the boogeyman, that isn't as bad as we think that it is. So this is what he says is pretty consistent about classroom environments that encourage cheating. And notice the wording here is that this is putting the pressure and the responsibility on us as faculty, because we create the environment, and it's the environment that encourages cheating, not just some innate factor of the students, as in, oh, well, just mostly male students are going to cheat, or it's the students who are trying to get into nursing school, or the students who are transfer students from another college or university, that it's our environments that we create are the biggest encouragement to cheating from students. So what are those main contextual factors? It's when we have a class that has an emphasis on performance, as in you get one chance on the exam. So you put a lot of pressure on this one assessment opportunity, that it's high stakes, that it's not just one chance, it's that the exam is worth a lot. So if you think about this, this may be like the stereotypical, your grade is completely based on a midterm and a final. So a lot riding on it. That you encourage in your class an extrinsic, not an intrinsic motivation, as in the students see your exam as an obstacle that must be overcome, not a chance to test and prove the work that they've put in. Maybe they don't see the relevance of your class. And I think for those of us in STEM and certainly in biology or science more specifically, we have classes that are inherently relatable. So they should be high in extrinsic motivation. Even the stereotypical ones that students say, I don't know the meaning of this, math, statistics, that should be so easy to make relevant because people are using math all the time around them. And then finally, if there's a low expectation of success, as in students have low self-confidence, or the term they use is self-efficacy, that the students believe my actions don't matter. Maybe they don't understand the goals of the class, like the learning objectives are not clearly outlined, or maybe they don't trust your exams. A student just says, well, what does it matter? Because the questions don't make any sense anyway. They're all tricky questions or whatever that is. So a student believes that their actions don't matter. So as you can see here, this is what James Lang says, that if a student is taking a class that has this sort of environment, that cheating actually becomes a logical response to such a situation. That if you, put yourself in that situation, if there's high pressure, if you don't get a chance to demonstrate what you've learned in different ways, if you're bored by the class and you don't believe that your actions matter, cheating is actually the most logical response. Well, I have to take this class, I need to pass it, but nothing seems to make sense. It's genuinely too difficult, then I'm going to cheat. So then what do we do then as faculty with this? So this should be the goal of our course design, once again, coming from cheating lessons. The environments, and this is what James Lang realized when he started looking at the research here, that the environments which reduce the incentive and opportunity to cheat are the very environments that will lead to greater and deeper learning by your students. So you can actually do two things at once. You can actually lower, and in some cases completely eliminate cheating, while at the same time encouraging greater and deeper learning and engagement and enjoyment from your students. So how does this happen? Is at first you have to foster intrinsic motivation. I already mentioned this because we're flipping the environments that encourage cheating. We have to make the information relevant, intriguing, and engaging. I mean, these are those questions, those broad questions you want to engage students with at the beginning of the semester, at the beginning of each of your classes. We want to encourage students to learn for mastery, not for performance. And so what does a performance environment would be? The example that he uses is like, if you think about like the Olympics, specifically he talks about the original Greek Olympics, is that you get one chance to demonstrate how good you can be. So that would be a performance environment, that you get one chance to perform well. Mastery is going to be how we learn anything. We get to make mistakes. We get to learn a little bit here. Maybe we forget a little bit. We learn a little bit more. So that's what we want to implement in our classes. So a mastery environment, assessments that align with a mastery environment, these type of assessments are diverse, meaning there are multiple different ways for students to demonstrate what they've learned. Maybe that's multiple choice exams and quizzes, maybe that's short answer, maybe that's service learning, maybe that's a journal review or an article review, maybe that's an in-class presentation. All sorts of ways that it's a diversity of options, not just trying to force all of your students to demonstrate their own unique learning in all the same way. Is that you provide agency. Maybe you provide all of these different options and you let students get some choice into what they present. So maybe if you're going to require everybody to do a presentation, to give students a choice into what they want to present, because that's going to increase enjoyment and engagement. And then obviously there are opportunities for growth. If you just give that one performance and you just have a bad day, well, too bad, drop the class, take it again, better luck next semester. So no, we want multiple opportunities for growth, that students actually can learn, heaven forbid, that they would learn from the assessment that they take, that it's not just boom, that's it, move on. That exams, this should be the idea of exams and assessments, that they are a means to an end, not an end in and of itself. That the exams are just one more opportunity, maybe a bigger, obviously exams are going to have a little more weight than other assessments, but it's still a means, it's still an opportunity to learn, not just the demonstration of learning, that everything should be this growth mindset. We need to lower the stakes. Research is very clear that we need to increase the frequency of the exams and quizzes. This may seem counterintuitive because some people would say, well, the more quizzes and tests you give, the more overwhelmed the student will feel, and the more opportunity you're giving to cheat. But there's a huge body of research that looks at what's called the testing effect, that it is literally the act of testing that helps to consolidate information, consolidate those memories, but most importantly, the testing effect doesn't just help with storage, it helps with recall, because usually the issue is not putting information into your brain, it's actually accessing and finding that information to recall it on the test. And we've all heard students who said, well, I studied a lot, and you know they studied a lot, but they still did poorly on the exam because they hadn't been practicing the ability to recall. And this is why the more we test, the more we assess, as we say, in a low stakes environment, mastery with intrinsic motivation, the better these students are going to learn the material and actually build their own confidence. And so that leads to the final thing, is to instill self-efficacy, is that we as faculty want to with our words and with the design of our course, create an accurate sense of skill and knowledge from the student perspective. So this partly comes from student metacognition. Are you accurately giving students the skill set and the opportunities to demonstrate to themselves, do they know the material or do they not know the material? And because a lot of times our students don't have that self-awareness. Most of us don't. This would be what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, that you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't know it, you think you know it. So the only way to expose that lie that you've told yourself is to test and demonstrate to yourself, I don't know it. So we need to give students the skill and the opportunity to develop that student metacognition, and we need to have accurate faculty communication, is that we need to accurately convey the requirements of our course, the expectations of our course, and to tell students you're either doing well or not doing well. So don't just give attaboys. If students leave your lecture or leave a homework opportunity and feel, and it was too easy, and they don't realize it, but they just did well on it, that they weren't challenged appropriately, well, then it's going to lead to overconfidence. And if a student is overconfident, they're going to understudy. And we obviously know that if you understudy, you're not going to perform well on the exam, and that's going to lead to discouragement. And could lead to a student not trusting the design of your course and not trusting you as their guide through this material. So then kind of the second part of this is, let's look at some of my own student data. So as I said, this was one of my A&P1 sections. So I asked this question week 1 to students. So they hadn't even taken my class. I guess maybe some of them had even read the syllabus, but question being, do online exams make you nervous? And I grouped this as some that were definitively yes, they do make me nervous, some that were definitively no, they don't make me nervous, and some that I just called a no yes. Maybe they had a caveat. They kind of make me nervous, but I'm all right with it, something like that. So I just called it a no yes. So here are the results from one section of Biology 2214. So there were 28 students who responded. 7 students, so that's 25%, said yes, they make me nervous. 9 students said no. 11 were a no yes, kind of an in between. And the majority of these no yeses still preferred an online exam. And then only 1 student just didn't respond at all to the question. So let's see what was the student reasoning. Just kind of summarizing here, the yes, online exams make me nervous, kind of were grouped into 3 things here. Technical issues, a worry about technical issues. Maybe they didn't have consistent internet, whatever it was, distractions at home. I've got kids at home, so I'm worried about them running through the screen. I can't focus. And then others were worry about the appearance of cheating and being flagged. Once again, am I going to be, Mr. Nolan, am I going to be flagged if my kid sits in my lap while I take the test or runs through the back, or I have to yell at them because they're, swinging on the fan? Is that going to kick me off? Is that going to boot me? Am I going to get an F? For the students who said no, they do not make me nervous. Interestingly, they said I like an online exam because it's less distractions, less anxiety, more comfortable at home. So this was something like, I don't have to worry about students who are finishing early and me feeling pressure that I should be done already. They like the flexibility of being able to take the exams at home when they wanted to. And most of the students were very experienced with online exams. I think, in fact, I only had 1 student who responded that they had never taken an online exam before. For the split no yeses, a lot of these no yeses just said, well, all exams make me nervous. It doesn't matter if it's face-to-face or online, but they still had some of the same reasons as above. And like I said, most preferred online exams anyway. So let's look at what was my intervention based on the research from James Lang, based on my student responses that I've heard, and just my own disdain for proctoring. So here are my goals. I wanted to reduce test anxiety. I wanted to lower, if I could reduce completely, but I couldn't, it is an online class. I wanted to lower technical worry. I wanted to increase learning and material engagement, but I still wanted to have a valid assessment. So this was the main intervention that I did, is that I took each exam, still did the same breakdown of exams. This was 4 exams. The data will cover 3 exams, but that each exam will have 2 parts. Part A will be a traditional proctored exam. So like I said, typical proctored, just like we were doing face-to-face. You sit at the computer, here's your multiple choice questions. There you go, congratulations. 4 answer choices. These questions were written with a lower level of blooms, you know, kind of the 50 questions in 60 minutes sort of things. Then I also, part B was a take-home multiple choice exam. This obviously was a take-home. Students would have about a week to work on it. Each question had 6 answer choices. I included on most questions a, you know, kind of A and B only, all of the above, A, B, and C only, something like that, to make them high level blooms. These are questions that are covering multiple learning objectives at a high level, even higher than kind of my homework could even cover, but really meant to test the students here at a high level. So at this point here, close to the end of the semester, I wanted to compare statistics between parts A and B of these exams, and then correlate these scores to the current grade in the class, and then of course reassess student affect after taking this, because I have a feeling most students have never taken, and I definitely got the feedback that most students have never taken exams in this way. So then my student data question 2, this was at week 8 after taking 2 exams. The question being, do you find the test format decreasing or increasing your test anxiety? So at this point, 4 students had dropped. So there were 24 students who responded. 19 of the 24, you see almost 80% of the students responded that this test format decreased their anxiety. No student mentioned that this format increased their anxiety. And then 4 students said that there was no change. Maybe these are the students who just said that all exams make me nervous. I'll see on the next page, the next slide, I think I have this quote, but one student said, I absolutely hate the take-home exam, but at the end of the day, you either know it or you don't. So it was kind of a no change there. And then once again, one student did not respond. So student reasoning. For the students who said less anxiety, this is what they said. You can see the question was pretty just a general prompt. So here's what they said, that the students like to use the take-home exam as a study tool to prepare for part A that would help them expose weak points. They said that the take-home reduces stress because they have more time to work on it and more time to engage with the material. That leads to the next thing, that they found that the take-home test led to deeper testing of knowledge and concepts. So they're able to see, to reflect that, wow, this really is helping me engage with the material. They would do research, of course, on the internet, in different textbooks, and reaching out to me, really thinking through these questions at a high level. Of course, there were less technical problems with a take-home exam that you just had to put in your answers for a quiz without any proctoring. And so here was obviously a positive quote from a student that I thought was worth including here. By far the best exam format I've seen in online classes. Better opportunity to grow and enhance our knowledge. And I think, like, what an incredible compliment from a student to give for this type of exam format. For those who were neutral, I already mentioned hate take home with a passion. But then this student said all exams are the same. You either know it or you don't. And so that was kind of where these neutral students said, I don't really care. At the end of the day, you just have to take it. You still have to prepare. You still have to take it. Who cares what you do? So then the third question that I wanted to look at is the take-home exam valid? Obviously the risk, you say take-home exam, oh my gosh, students are going to cheat. They're just going to find the smart student and use their answer. So can I look for evidence of cheating? And this is very basic statistical analysis, but I think that it does give us some insight. So let's look here to compare part A to part B. So remember, part A is the traditional proctored exam, part B is the take-home exam. So let's look at exam 1. Part A had an 85 average, part B had a 72 average, with the range of part A being the high of 95 to a low of 65. And then part B, a high of 93 to a low of 10. Remember, this is a 10. This is a take-home exam, and a student made a 10 on it. Exam 2, you can see Part A, 78 average. Student did make a perfect 100 on this with a low of 60. And then Exam 2 for Part B, also a 78 average with a 92 to 52 range. And then finally, Exam 3, 73 average on Part A with a 96 to 44 range. And Part B, 79 average with a 93 to 63 range. So when I look at these, for the most part, Part B had lower scores than Part A, which is unsurprising, being that they were written as higher level blooms. On average, my A students gave me feedback that they were spending 4 to 5 hours prepping and taking the take home, which if we could get students to study 4 to 5 hours for their regular proctored exam, is just incredible. So incredible amount of work would be put in to actually make A's on these tests. But you can see, so Part B, little lower average for the most part. But I think you can see very, very close. And certainly nothing from here would seem to imply that the take home was too easy or too conducive of cheating. As you can see that the scores are not really significantly different. Certainly you can see the average on every Part B was a C on that. So let's kind of look at correlations and grades. Once again, this is why I say that this is a slightly empirical study. I just did a basic 2-column correlation test in Excel. So when I give these numbers, obviously I know what we want to basically see from correlations or what they mean. Whether that is valid with what I did in Excel, I'd love to hear your feedback on. But so first I correlated the scores of the Part A averages as a whole to the Part B averages, and the correlation was 0.38, which is still, I mean, I think 0.38 on something that is as variable as human nature is really pretty good. But I was a little disappointed because I would think that the scores on Part A and Part B would be much more directly related. So then I did, let's compare the average score of Part A, the traditional exam, to their current grade. This was as of a couple days ago. So this was still missing out on one exam and the final and some other things, but to their current grade. And so the correlation here was 0.48 on if a student, what they scored on Part A, what does that reflect to their current grade in the class, which I still think is pretty good. And then I did it to Part B, the take-home averages to the current grade, and the correlation was 0.85, which of course is just almost too high to believe. And so I tried to double check everything that I could, but certainly that is an incredible correlation from the Part B take home to the current grade in the class. And just so you know, as of this point in the class, with one more exam and homework left, these are my current letter grades. So 3 A's, 10 B's, 6 C's, 2 D's, 0 F's, and 7 students have dropped up to this point, which is a very nice looking little bell curve here. So nothing unusual in the letter grade. So it's not like this class became all of a sudden too easy. It's breaking down exactly how we'd like to see or how I'd expect in any of my other classes. So then fourth and final, what are the conclusions that I can kind of pull from my experience here? So remember, let's go back to my goals. First, I wanted to reduce test anxiety. Clearly, I reduced test anxiety. The students overwhelmingly gave that feedback, whatever it was, almost 80% of students. Did I lower technical worry? I give a partial check to this in that for question 2, that was sort of that mid-semester check-in. I think really only one student specifically mentioned lowering technical worry, but obviously if you give a take-home exam, there really is no opportunity for the technology to mess up. Did I increase learning and material engagement? Absolutely. We saw the quote from that one student that of those 19 who preferred this format, many of them talked about how much more they were able to engage with material in a low stress environment. And did I have a valid assessment? Well, you see from that very basic statistical analysis that the take-home exam was not too easy. There's no clear evidence of cheating. Obviously, no student would tell me that they're cheating, but there's nothing from the grades that would imply that. And certainly it does correlate incredibly well to their current grade in the class. And part of this, of course, would include their grade is not just based on their exam score. There is homework and quizzes, a lot of other things to do. And I think more importantly is what it shows is that the students who are willing to put in that much work and effort to score well on the take-home exam are more likely than not to be the students who are putting in the 15 to 20 hours a week, each week, to do the Learn Smart in Connect, to do the homework in Connect, to do the quizzes in Connect, and to do their own personal study for things they don't understand. So it does very clearly look like that this exam format was a valid assessment. So multiple choice take-home exam is a valid and beneficial tool to add into your assessment toolbox. Of course, there are still risks. This is not that, oh, this is the answer, you can rest easy, because the more you use a take-home exam, the more the questions could get out there. I didn't give students the answers, they just got their score. They would have to meet with me to get the answers, but there's always a risk that once you start putting those answers out there, so the way to overcome that is you just have to write new questions each semester, and that can become very cumbersome, especially writing multiple choice questions at that high of a level. So that is the biggest risk here, but I think that it's worth the risk when you see the payoff. And then finally, the conclusion here is I encourage each and every one of you to read Cheating Lessons. What an incredible book. Very easy read, and a lot of great suggestions, real practical suggestions from multiple different class types, student class sizes, all of these things that can really benefit you and inspire you and ultimately your students in your classes. And the book even finishes with some administrative sort of campus-wide interventions that we can do as well. But it really focuses on what can you do in your class locally? What do you as the faculty member have control over? So some additional designs to try that I would like to try in classes in the future, or you could try, is it giving multiple exam attempts, multiple opportunities to demonstrate their learning, to grow. Students incorporate journaling. This is something that's uncheatable. I mean, I guess technically you could copy somebody else's journaling thoughts, but it's a personal reflection. There's really no reason for a student to cheat on something that is a reflection on their studying or the process, sort of this metacognition. You could do current article review and presentations. Think if you tell students to do a presentation on something that is course relevant, but an article that was published since the beginning of the semester or the end of the previous semester, it is clearly uncheatable, because previous students wouldn't have already done the article. So, because it's a new article. So student review and presentations, service learning, which we have a lot of our classes already, already doing. Clearly students have to go out and do the work. And then what I like to call an assessment buffet. And this is where you can give a variety of different assessments, both exams and presentations. And you just tell students, listen, to make an A, you have to get to 800 points. You're not doing the percentage of 90%. You're just saying 800 points is an A. And students can do as much work as they want to piece together all of these different things that they feel comfortable with. And you've created them, so you're comfortable with them, to reach that goal. And so those would be some things that came from Cheating Lessons that I think will accomplish all of those goals too. To reduce cheating and ultimately to increase learning and engagement from our students. So thank you all for watching this presentation. Certainly reach out if you have any questions. I'd love to hear your feedback.